Obviously, mistakes happen, but somehow the title company misses it. Fast forward 6 months, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years later, somebody comes back, Bank of America, says, "Hey, you owe me $300,000." You say, "What are you talking about? I don't owe you $300,000." Or I guess in this scenario it's me. I bought the property. I don't owe you $300,000. And say, "Well, look, we had this mortgage on the property. It's still there. It didn't go away. It's never been paid." What I would do, again, I'm the buyer in this situation because I bought the property from you, is I put in a claim with my title insurance company, and title insurance company would pay off the mortgage, would settle the mortgage, would fight about the mortgage, would do whatever they would do on that claim. But again, the risk, the burden of the risk has now been shifted from me, the owner of the property, to the title insurance company. Exact same scenario that we discussed a few minutes ago with the ownership question in the long lost brother. The whole idea is to shift the burden of the risk of the lien or encumbrance continuing to show up on the property from you, the buyer. I'm throwing it back to you, that you're the buyer, to the title company. Okay? And if there's a claim, and again, same scenario, where the claim is a day later, a week later, a month, a year, 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, the risk has been shifted. Also, same as with the issues related to ownership. The policy stays in effect for the entire length that you own the property. You own the property, you flip it the next week. It was a 1-week policy. That's how long it lived. You own the property for 50 years and you have a claim in year 49. Policy's still in effect. Same exact scenario that we discussed a little bit earlier. So mortgage is really the most, the one that people know the best. But there are other types of claims that can encumber a property. So let's say, for example, during the time that you own the property and before you sold it to me, bad snowstorm, somebody slipped and fell, got hurt, filed a lawsuit against you saying, "Hey, you should have shoveled your sidewalk. You didn't do so. I'm going to sue you." And for whatever reason, either you ignored the lawsuit or you didn't ignore it. You fought it, but you lost. And they got a $50,000 judgment against you. That judgment also gets recorded, and if it's properly recorded and properly docketed, also becomes a lien and encumbrance on the piece of property. And that piece of property, again, cannot be sold or transferred to me or to some other buyer until and unless that judgment is paid off. Let me just and this is probably a good place for me to talk about the subject to thing, that the big fat asterisk that I talked about a few minutes ago. It is true that you could buy a property subject to. So let's forget the mortgage. Nobody really is going to buy a property. Most people are not going to buy a property subject to an institutional lender's mortgage. But maybe this judgment. Maybe when I come and buy this piece of property from you, I see that there's a $50,000 judgment on it, and I say, "You know what? I'm willing to buy this property subject to that judgment." What does that mean? That means that the judgment still stays on there. You don't have to satisfy it. It's no longer your problem. It's my problem. Let's just say, for argument's sake, it was a $50,000 judgment. I might be a smart guy. I'm not saying I am, but I might be a smart guy and say, "Okay, I'm going to give you $50,000 less for the property." Why? Because maybe I'm a clever guy and I know how to pay that guy off less than $50,000. Maybe there's some reason that I'm willing to buy it subject to. I can absolutely do that. However, and we'll get to this in more detail when we talk about Schedule B of the title report, the title company is also going to make, in effect, that the title policy subject to. So the title company will say, "Sure, we're insuring you against everything in the world, but we're not insuring you against that judgment." Why? Because it's still there. Title company is not going to insure you against the judgment unless the judgment is gone. If the judgment's still there, title company will let you close, but they're not going to provide title insurance for that one item for the judgment. And we'll talk about that in more detail when we talk about